We made it through the holidays and look forward to 2023. I'm Jonna Lou Johnstone. I'm your co-lead interim minister for reflection and discovery. And I'd like to welcome everyone here this morning to consider our past, present, and future, how the past shapes us as we rest in the present and look forward to what is to come. I welcome those of you whose presence has persisted through good times and challenges, and those who have never been with us before, and those who join us online. I do offer a particular welcome this morning to those of you who are guests, and I encourage you to fill out the visitor card that you'll find in the pew before you, or online. You can find the visitor card in the Sunday morning links. We are pleased that you found us and would love to know more about you. We come from a long tradition of seeing a spark of the divine in every person, and it's in that tradition that I invite you to greet one another online in the chat or right here in person.
Good morning, how are you all? Welcome.
Good morning. My name's Carolyn Grimminger. I'm your lay leader this morning, and I'm so happy to see so many people here. Would you please recite with me the words for lighting our chalice? This is the flame we hold in our hearts as we strive for justice for everyone. This is the light we shine upon systems of oppression until they are no more. Share with one another as our struggle becomes our salvation. Our call to worship this morning is Let Astonishment Be Possible by Reverend Gretchen Haley, Senior Minister of Foothills UU Church in Fort Collins, Colorado. Whatever you come in anticipating, whatever you expect or worry for our world, for the future, for our lives, let it go. Make space in your heart to be surprised. Make room in your soul for a new story to take shape. Let astonishment be possible. At this life that remains a miracle, imagine here the bursting of joy, relentless and resilient, coming in waves, washing over us with music and story, silence, and still this dreaming together, being hope for each other, encouraged to believe in this new day dawning for us all. And now rise as you are willing and able for hymn number 58, Ring Out Wild Bells.
Thank you.
know, it's always good to try new things. The mission of this church shapes its ministries and its presence in the world. The congregation wrote it together, then you put it on the wall in the sanctuary, and we say it together every Sunday so that we may more readily carry it with us in our hearts through the week. So let's do so now. Together we nourish souls, transform lives, and do justice to build the beloved community. And one of the ways that we build beloved community is through giving and offering to organizations that support our vision. And one such organization, this month's recipient of the monthly service offering that we will take in a few minutes, is Texas UU Justice Ministry, and Reverend Erin this morning puts on her other hat to tell us about that.
Good morning. I am Reverend Erin Walter, and I serve with Reverend John Alou as one of your interim ministers, the Minister for Joy and Justice. And as she said, the other hat that I'm putting on, imagine all of us trying to organize Texas Unitarian Universalists across the entire state for justice work. It is so important, it is so needed, and it is hard work. Those of you who do social justice work here in this congregation know the challenges of trying to organize even a few people to do a thing. So today, it is my honor to put on that Texas UU Justice Ministry hat to represent your UU State Action Network, which brings UU congregations together across the state, online and in person, to bring our UU values and voices into a public square that needs to know that there are people of faith who believe in the things that we believe in. Thank you. Amen. Ashe and blessed be. I bring love and gratitude from our board, from your fellow member congregations around the state, about 40 of them, some of them in tiny towns where it is really risky to be a Unitarian Universalist. Living here in Austin, I hope you can try to imagine what it's like for people in congregations of 10 or 20 to feel like they're trying to do this justice work in the state of Texas, and how life-giving and how important it is for them to know that they're not alone, that you bring resources and support from a congregation like this, and that you are doing the work with them. TexSUJM's role as a state action network is to support your local justice work and also invite the congregation into shared collaborative state and national efforts. 2022 was a big year for TexSUJM in that, and for you. We're celebrating 10 years as an organization, and I want to give a shout out. Thank you. I want to give a shout out especially to Peggy Morton and Wendy Erisman, members of this congregation who have been vital parts of those first 10 years in our leadership. This fall, TexSUJM members sent more than 15,000 postcards and texted over 500,000 Black voters in Texas fighting voter suppression, part of a greater UU effort with UU the Vote that reached more than 1 million voters. We are a state with typically low voter turnout, so this work is very powerful, and it is long-haul work of living our principles. Meanwhile, day in, day out throughout the years, we are doing work of educating UUs and spiritually grounding us in crucial issues from trans inclusion to climate to racial justice all year long. We co-hosted the OWL training here with this church, making sure that we have facilitators for that important program all over the state. And we believe that that work is planting seeds for generations to come of people who are going to be living inclusion, running for office, making sure that Texas is no longer known as a state that attacks people for who they are. TechSouJim is part of the Teach the Truth Coalition, where we advocate with our partners so that the State Board of Education would bring accurate and inclusive social studies curriculum and all curriculum to our kids. Yeah. Every night, we need it. Every night in our every Thursday night in our Zoom action hour, we take action together for issues like immigration, death penalty, liberation, you name it, you send it to us. We're taking those actions together in community on Zoom every Thursday night, and you are invited. Those Thursday nights were on break for the holiday. We start again this Thursday. I've talked to you before in this pulpit about the spiritual practice of reading your email. The link to that gathering is in your email, in our church What's Happening This Week email. Last but not least, there's so much going on, and I'm going to be at the social action table today to tell you more about it. But our 10th anniversary event is less than 2 weeks away, right here at First UU. I am so proud that this church is hosting this event. We will be hearing from powerful speakers from the AFIA Center, from Texas Impact, from Texas Freedom Network, from Mano Amiga, from your own justice ministry, and we will be getting together to talk about and ground ourselves for the work ahead. We need financial support to do this. You, as our member congregations, are the foundation of this work. It takes people power to organize and do this work. It doesn't happen on love and butterflies, as much as I wish that it did. If I could fund it with rainbows, you know that I would. I need you, we need you, your fellow UUs across the state need you, everyone in Texas needs you. We are vital to the work of bending Texas toward justice. And so I ask you at this crucial time in the life of the Justice Ministry to please give as generously as you can. We are not funded by outside organizations. We are funded by the congregations. And so everything you can give, we are putting it to work. I promise you. Thank you so much to everyone who's given in the past. And thank you so much for your generosity and your time today. Blessed be.
morning. I'm Kelly Stokes. I'm the Director of Lifespan Religious Education, and I'm going to read you a story. And this is the time when we normally invite the kids up to get a better view of the story, but today we have a really special book with some really special... So I'm going to invite anyone that wants a better view to come join me up here. We're going to come sit right by the chalice. Yes, come sit together. Your cousins, I'm so glad you could come. Come on up.
And we also were together yesterday, so it's triple seeing time.
Oh, that sounds so fun. Hi. I'm so glad to see you all. Come up close. I'm going to hold the book like this. So I want to make sure you can see it. Do you see these little lines right there? Does anyone know what those are?
Yes.
Tell me.
The spine of the book.
The spine of the
Like
book.
The spine of your body. My
Like-
mom's in there, so I know.
That's great. The spine. What? Well, so it is where we see the binding, and the binding is the stitches that hold the book together, the spine of the book, just like the spine of our body. Did you learn that in school? I love that. So what's interesting about a book is because all the pages are stitched together, when you get to the middle page, the very center of the book, you can see all the stitches going down the middle, just like the spine in our bodies, right? So keep that in mind. Now, sometimes I get worried, and I think about things that happened a long time ago, and I just can't stop thinking about them. Or I think about things that might happen tomorrow or this week, things that are coming up, and I get a little worried, and it's hard for me to stop thinking about those things. Does that ever happen? Does that happen to you?
I'm
Yeah.
sad because my cat Roxy died. She's my favorite.
I'm so sorry to hear that. I had a cat who died last year, too. It's hard, isn't it? So,
Because I had a dog. His name was Taco.
Taco. And Taco died, yeah. We all have reasons to be sad about things that happened in the past or worried, right? Yeah? Yeah. That's great. So I have a trick for us when we get worried about things that happened a long time ago or things that are going to happen in the future. When our thoughts are really focused on things that happened before or things that happen in the future, and we can't stop thinking about them, the trick is to focus on your breath. You can close your eyes and think, I am breathing in as you breathe in. You want to try it? I am breathing out as you breathe out. And that's the way we bring ourselves back to right now, where we're not thinking about what happened before and we're not thinking about what happens next. But today, we are going to think about those things not in a worried way, but in a fun way. And this book was written for the adults of tomorrow, which is you, and the children of yesterday, which is most of you. And it's written as if it's to a child at bedtime. So we're going to pretend it's bedtime and we're in our beds and we're reading this story. And if you are a grown-up, you can imagine your child self reading this story. So this is Once Upon a Time There Was and Will Be So Much More by Johanna Scheibel. We're going to start a long time ago. Billions of years ago, land took shape. So Wadi, do you want to come up here with me? Do you want to come up here? Millions of years ago, dinosaurs lived on Earth. I bet a lot of you are experts on dinosaurs. Yeah, you're the dinosaur experts. Hundreds of thousands of years ago, people moved from place to place. Can you see the tiny people? Can anyone spot them? Can you see the tiny people? Yes. Thousands of years ago, people built some very large things. And there's more people up there.
And they had little sticks, and they glued the sticks together with mud.
Oh, cool. 100 years ago, a journey took a long time. 10 years ago, the landscape looked different. A year ago, birds flew south. Birds fly south in the winter to where it's warmer. A month ago, it was still fall.
Yeah, it doesn't turn winter until December 21st.
A week ago, there was a lot going on in the city.
That's a lot. Yeah, because it was New Year.
Because it was New Year's. Yesterday, the weather was a little rainy.
Now I want it.
Not everywhere, right? An hour ago, the sun set. This is where we're pretending it's bedtime. An hour ago, the sun set. A minute ago, the light was turned off. What do you see there right down the middle? What's right in the middle? The spine. Do you want to feel the stitches? Yeah. Yeah. So we know we found our way to the center. We can tell it's the center because of the spine of the book. So right here at the center, right here where it's now, we're going to do our breathing. You ready? When I breathe in, I know I'm breathing in. When I breathe out, I know I'm breathing out.
Now, make a wish.
And it says, now that we've breathed in and out, we know we found our center, now we're going to make a wish for what comes next. You ready for what comes next? What time will you get up in the morning?
9.
Where will you be
Midnight.
in the afternoon?
Noon.
What will you do tomorrow evening?
Go to a fancy dinner. Go.
What will the weekend bring?
Monday. Sunday.
Who will you meet next month?
Winter.
We don't know, do we?
I don't
How will you celebrate your birthday next year? I bet you've already given this some thought.
I know.
I know you know.
I would do a date. I know what it is.
Where will you live in 10 years' time?
I
I don't know.
know anything about that.
What will you discover when you're grown up?
I'll just make my own stuff at midnight.
What sights will stay with you always?
I don't know. My mom. I'm getting away with my voice.
Will you have children one day?
Yeah.
What will you look back on when you're old?
Kids.
What do you wish for the future?
I'm gonna have a kid named Gooey Gummy.
So we have lots of ideas. You know what? We all have lots of ideas. Lillian, will you tell me when we go out there? Because we all have lots of ideas about what we wish for the future right now. So right now we're gonna sing our breathe in, breathe out song as we come back to our center and breathe in and breathe out, and we're all gonna go out to our classes. Ready? Let's go.
Beloveds, do you remember roly-polies? A roly-poly is a small bug covered by a flexible shell that looks like armor. They're also known by other names like potato bug and wood shrimp. Roly-polies roll up into a little ball to protect their soft underside, only displaying their hard shell. Times of change can make us want to roll up into a ball like a roly-poly, believing we are protecting our soft underside. But when we do, we cannot stretch toward one another, together breaking the harmful systems and structures of oppression and prejudice that keep us apart. Focusing on our breath can help us remain open, quieting our nervous systems when they are affected by worry and stress and anxiety of change. I invite you into a brief practice of noticing your breath with me. Where you are, find your center, that core spot in your body where you feel balanced. Take a deep breath. And take another deep breath. And as you continue to breathe, notice your breath coming in and out of your body. Notice perhaps your chest rising and falling, your belly expanding and contracting. Return to your breath if you find your mind is wandering. Return to breath. Return to your breath. Thank you. Your breath is always with you when you are with family and friends, when you are in worship on Sunday, in committee meetings. In the midst of change, return to your breath when you feel your anxiety and worry and stress rising. Breath. Breathe. I am Reverend Patrice Curtis, the Transformational Interim Ministries Director within UUA's Ministries and Faith Development Group. My ministries with interim and developmental ministers as they build belonging in our congregations during times of transitions. Held gently, a roly-poly will unfurl itself. May you feel held in love and compassion of our faith, so that you feel open. And may you hold others so that they too may feel open. And may you return to your breath in those times when you feel you want to curl up.
You're invited to light candles for your joys, sorrows, concerns, what lays in your heart.
Our meditation reading this morning is We Are Able by Vijaya Balan, a poet of Indian origin living in Copenhagen. He wrote this in a mixed, heavy week in July 2018. Things happen. Moments are created, faces are remembered, and feelings are tightly grasped within the dry skin of our cracked hands. Cracked hearts, too, maybe. Where do we go but forward? Remembering absent friends, lost loves, broken dreams, and a hope to bury it all in that dark backyard behind our weathered but sturdy home. We will move on, forge new paths, break new barriers, repeat a thing or two, but oh well. We all have some familiar cycles in our lives, right? We are resilient, built on the foundation of faith and belief. We are unwritten pages with past chapters that can fill a library that none might visit. And we will still go ahead and do everything we want to, regardless of what anyone else ever said. We are beings with a field of uncertainty, surrounded by determination at the most unexpected moments. Love and let go. Love and cherish. Love and be broken. Love and not expect anything in return. Love and be loved back 1,000 times. We are the sum of billions of atoms. We are the moments we create and the things that happen. We are the beliefs of more than thousands of faiths in the world. We are tragedies of past, the conundrums of the present, and the triumphs of tomorrow. We are able. We are capable of all of them. We are capable and able. Now I'd like to introduce Leo Collis. He's going to tell us some stories of the founding of our church.
Sorry about that. Good morning. Yeah, I love that reading. And Reverend John Lou asked me to give some background about this church, this congregation, and kind of what makes up its DNA. You know, why are we here? What brought us here? What brought us together? So I've done a lot of research, and this is the story of how this congregation and Unitarianism came to Austin. Unitarianism was brought to Austin by the Reverend Edwin Miller Wheelock in 1868. There's his picture. Wheelock was a Harvard-educated lawyer who also graduated from Harvard Divinity School as a Unitarian minister. He was friends with Ralph Waldo Emerson, and he was open to transcendentalism. He served in the Civil War as chaplain in the Union Army and afterward worked with the Freedmen's Bureau in the Gulf Coast area, Louisiana and Texas. He was married and he had 2 children. His specialty was education. He developed curriculums to teach formerly enslaved children how to read. His work was very effective, and in 1868, the governor of Texas moved him to Austin and appointed him as the first superintendent of schools. Now that sounds like a nice progressive career path, but there's really interesting backstory to all of this that makes it really an amazing story. Wheelock was a devoted abolitionist. He was passionate about what we now call human rights and was outspoken about the immoral institution of slavery. Here's the story about that. Soon after he got his first Unitarian ministerial appointment in Dover, Massachusetts, he delivered a stirring sermon supporting the raid on the federal armory at Harper's Ferry, Virginia, by fellow abolitionist John Brown. Now, those of you who don't remember every detail of your American history might not remember this, but Brown in October of 1859, just before the Civil War, raided the federal armory, intending to start a slave liberation movement that would spread to the southern states. It didn't seem like it was well planned, and the enslaved people that it was meant to liberate didn't exactly know what was going on, so it failed. Brown was tried for treason and was hanged on December 2nd, 1859, the first person executed for treason in the history of the United States. So that's interesting. But Wheelock, our friend Wheelock, He wrote a sermon about this, and that made him very famous. He was asked to speak in Boston, and his sermon was printed in newspapers. His sermon was in support of what Brown did. Wheelock's sermon didn't pull any punches on the topic of slavery. Here's a quote from it. Withholding the key of knowledge, abrogating the marriage relation, rending families asunder at the auction block makes the state that protects it a band of pirates and the church that enshrines it a baptized brothel. And he said lots of things like that through that sermon. The state of Virginia put a $1,500 bounty on his capture, dead or alive, for treason. They wanted to try him for treason for saying those things. Well, luckily for Wheelock, the Civil War broke out in 1861. He immediately enlisted and became a chaplain in the Union Army. That's how he got appointed to work with the Freedmen's Bureau during Reconstruction. But think about it. Here's a man who was once hated throughout the South, somehow able to work with both the Southern Gulf states and the federal government to do something that the people of the South found unimaginable, teaching reading to those that they had enslaved. Well, he was able to do it and do it successfully. And he got a high-ranking position in Texas from Governor Pease, who himself was a former slave owner. Wheelock had some pretty mighty diplomatic skills. He served in a number of high-ranking jobs in Texas government, including the superintendent of the School for the Blind, our good neighbors back here. He was a really charismatic man. Texas was not really ready for liberal religion at that time, and Wheelock knew that. But he went to Spokane, Washington in 1887 to form the Unitarian Society of Spokane, and he served as its minister there for 2 years. He came back to Austin. I guess he was inspired by that experience. He came back to Austin in 1891, started a Unitarian ministry here, always speaking up for the oppressed and against monopolies and conglomerates. That ministry survived Wheelock's death in 1901. He died in 1901 at the age of 72. And that ministry continued through the end of World War I. Now, Reverend Wheelock's daughter, Emily, carried the mantle of Unitarianism in Austin after her father's death and for the rest of her life. And from what I've gathered, she had a lot of her father's diplomacy and courage. Emily was married to a British man by the name of John Howson, who was associated with the International Great Northern Railroad and the Austin National Bank. He was moneyed, let's say. They had one child who died as an infant in 1889. Emily's great social justice passion was for getting the vote for women. She was involved in every organization that promoted women's rights, and she was a leader of many of them. Emily was a charter member of the Austin Women's Club and was involved in the formation of the Texas Federation of Women's Clubs. After years of working towards women's suffrage, Emily was 59 years old when the 19th Amendment was ratified in 1920. Unitarianism survived quietly, evolving after World War II into the Community Church of Austin, which ceased in the winter of 1951 when it morphed into the Unitarian Fellowship of Austin. Services were held in people's homes initially, and among the founding members was Emily Wheelock Howson, who was by then 90 years old. Emily called in all of her favors to get things jump-started for this church. I think she knew it was her last hurrah. The YWCA gave this fellowship space to meet. The Texas Federation of Women's Clubs did the same. Other women's organizations gave equipment and administrative assistance. Finally, in 1954, the Unitarian Fellowship of Austin had grown strong enough to call its first minister and became incorporated as the First Unitarian Church of Austin. That's where we get the 1954 date. There were 66 families committed to the new church with 81 members, and it was continuing to grow. It has continued to grow. Sadly, in 1957, Emily Wheelock Howson died. She was 96 years old. but she wasn't done helping this congregation. She left this congregation a legacy of $100,000, equivalent to about $1 million today, maybe more, depends on. They used it to buy land. They used it to purchase the land that this church was built on, this site. And the building was dedicated in January of 1961 with house and hall named in Emily's honor. As an aside, this property was purchased in 1960 for $20,000. And the building, which was just the house and hall part, cost $86,100 to build. Reverend Wheelock and his daughter Emily played key roles in forming this church, but they were not the only ones. It was their spirit, their determined commitment to the spiritual practice of social justice that helped inspire others, and I'm certain they were inspired by many people. After House and Hall was built in 1961, the classroom wing was built in 1968, and in 1987, this beautiful sanctuary was added. There are many stories about the things that have taken place here, many people who've worked toward compassion and justice in this place, from racial integration to LGBTQ rights, moral treatment of immigrants and refugees, reproductive justice, the list just goes on. Oh, you're looking at that? Yeah, in 1961, when the initial church building was built, the Austin American Statement published this article, Unitarian Service Features Dancing. I'm sure that caused a collective clutch of the pearls around the city. But little did they know, we were just getting started. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Leo. It is important to hear and know the stories of our past. To find ourselves, our center, which is this month's theme, we need to learn from the past, rest in the present, and look forward to the future. The poet said earlier, we are the tragedies of the past, the conundrums of the present, and the triumphs of tomorrow. Of course, we're also the triumphs of the past, the joys of the present, and the uncertainties of tomorrow. Both are true. I no longer believe that my biography begins with my birth. I can't tell my personal story without also telling you about my parents, who met in the military and courted going to Broadway shows on USO tickets, and who gave me both my genes and a nurturing environment. My story even includes my grandparents who shaped my parents. Would I be who I am if my mother's parents had not run a dairy farm in Oklahoma? If her grandparents hadn't moved to Oklahoma from Illinois and Iowa? If my father's father hadn't come to Maine from Canada? If my father hadn't been adopted? My beginnings go back further in time than I can even recount or recall, because I only know them from the stories of other people. We create our stories of ourselves. All of us have stories we tell over and over about our lives. The story of how we met our spouse, of how we chose our career, of the birth of our child, of the death of our parent. We tell our stories to reinforce our experience and so that we can understand better what has happened to us and who we are. And this is true for trauma as well as joy, failure as well as success. It's why we tell the stories of those who we love after they die. We are inscribing those stories on our heart and our mind so that our loved one lives on. We really only learn from our experience when we have translated and refined our story. Without putting it into a form, we can't really learn from it. We need the story to make meaning out of experience, to understand what's happened, to learn so that we can move on, whether in the same or in a different way. Commentator David Brooks has written, if you don't have a real story, you don't have a real self. And we do the same thing on communal levels. Our families have stories. Our church does, as Leo shared a bit this morning. Our nation does. None of these stories are idle or random. They establish the essence of civilization, teach us how life is to be, how people are to act, and what has the most value. The past is as much story as history, so it matters if and how we include the 1619 arrival of enslaved people in this country, the genocide and land grabbing against indigenous people, the colonization, the Civil War. None of these stories is singular. They are collections of individual stories, and they always have a particular perspective. History is never as simple as, look at that perfect hero, or that evil person ruined everything. We'd like it to be so, but the stories really are nuanced, full of imperfect heroes and a tug of war between good and evil where the sides cannot always be identified until later. The white UU theologian Rebecca Parker gives us perspective on just how broken our world is. And she wrote this in the early days of the 21st century, long before the current crises. She wrote, "We are living in a post-slavery, post-Holocaust, post-Hiroshima world. We are living in the aftermath of collective violence that has been severe, massive, and traumatic. The scars from slavery, genocide, and meaningless war mark our bodies. We are living in the midst of rainforest burning, the rapid death of species, the growing pollution of air and water, and new mutations of racism and violence." Parker's phrase, post-slavery, post-Holocaust, post-Vietnam, post-Hiroshima world, reminds us of the significance of what we call history. And she goes on to say that that has left scars. And today we'd need to add post-9/11, post-January 6th, and living amidst the spread of viruses previously unknown. Scottish-American moral philosopher Alistair MacIntyre says, "I can't answer the question, what am I to do, until I can answer the prior question of what story or stories do I find myself a part?" As consequential, powerful, and unavoidable as stories are, they can also mislead us, even trap us in a lie. And that's why we need to continually re-examine, retell, rewrite the stories. Have you ever been with siblings and told childhood stories only to find that you all remember what happened differently? You could consider this problematic if our memory was like a video recording that we could trust to be objective, but it's not. Our memories include our emotional responses as well as sensory data, our judgments as well as our observations, which is why our sibs don't agree with our memories of that Thanksgiving long ago. We did not live the same experience. Now, the advantage to the way we encode long-term memory is that we can rewrite our stories, either to include new information that we didn't know before, or to look at our lives from a different perspective. Psychologists call it narrative therapy, a process of telling a story that grounds a particular problem, then finding new ways of seeing that story and retelling it so that the problem is minimized. Here's a simple example from UU Minister Amanda Pompey. She writes, I used to believe a story that I was a bad driver. I don't like driving on highways. I once hit a parking post in a garage. I needed the examiner to explain the three-point turn during my driver's test. All those things are true, and so the story must be true too. But over time, I've worked on hearing a different story. This story is the one about how I drive all through DC, handling traffic circles like a pro. It's about good parallel parking skills and always wearing my seatbelt and using a blinker. It's about passing my driver's test the first time, since I did, after all, know how to make a three-point turn. Those things are all true too, so the story must be true. The stories we tell ourselves are interpretive at least as much as reality-based. We have some freedom to choose our stories, not absolute freedom. If your stories drift far enough from real facts, they become ridiculous fantasies like the biography of George Santos. A tree, whatever the circumstances, does not become a legume, a vine, or a cow, explains biracial Ghanaian Brit Kwame Anthony Appiah in Ethics of Identity. The reasonable middle view is that constructing an identity is a good thing, but that the identity must make some kind of sense. We don't get to choose everything about our story because we are shaped by who we are born as and the people we have come from and by the people who are entangled in our lives and memories. But since we have stashed emotional and interpretive content in with our objective and sense-based data, we can pull the whole mess out and pull apart what's there and ask ourselves, is what I believe to be true about myself, about my life, really based in truth? Or has it been distorted? Have I learned something else? Do I need a new story? And part of the challenge is that when we encounter new facts that don't fit into our story, we tend to ignore the facts rather than reconfigure the story. And that's just how our brains are made, so we have to work to overcome that impulse, to dismiss what doesn't fit. None of us is one thing. None of us has a single story. Your church certainly does not have a single story, nor does our nation. Stories are shaped by who has the power to tell them, by the perspectives they include and exclude, by the visions they cast and the boundaries they draw. And stories shape us, which means we need to continually examine our stories for truth, for completeness, and for how they serve or fail to serve us. Stories can break and stories can repair, says Nigerian novelist Chimamanda Adichie. Indeed, stories can break and stories can repair. Returning to a past that has been distorted or moving ahead to a future that has never been more than a dream. We are going through a time in our nation where the illusion of a shared national story has evaporated, and recognizing the illusion for what it is, maybe we are freed to shift into the future with scales removed from our eyes. So we need this process of sorting out meaning. We have to see what we want to claim from the past and how to recast it to serve the future. We have to decide which relics are worn out and which enthusiasms we wish to pursue. So knowing more about the past and the present allows us to make more reasonable choices for the future. And the present is more than a dividing line between the past and the future. The Nigerian storyteller Ben Okri says, "We live by stories, we also live in them. One way or another, we are living the stories planted in us early or along the way, and we are also living the stories we planted unknowingly or knowingly in ourselves. We live stories that either give our lives meaning or negate it with meaninglessness. If we change the stories we live by, quite possibly we change our lives." Now, you use love utopian visions. Thumb through the hymnals sometime if you don't believe me. We will never reach those visions, those futures, that beloved community until we have better understood our past and acknowledged that our present. And that's true for us as individuals too. So may we treasure what we can of the past, acknowledge the rest of it, rest contentedly in the present as we move toward the future we envision together. I invite you to join in hymn number 1028 in the Teal book, Fire of Commitment. I invite you to rise in body or spirit. An offering will be taken for the ongoing support of the church. You can find information about texting on the back of the pew. You can, if you're online, you can go to the website and find a place to donate, or you can give in the offering plates. So, if you want to consider more about the story of this church, be sure you've registered for next Saturday's history workshop. You can find the link from the website, or just show up Saturday at 10 o'clock in House and Hall. All are welcome. To draw more on Aaron's earlier talk, the Texas Unitarian Universalist Justice Ministry, our UU State Action Network, is holding its 10th anniversary gathering on Saturday, the 21st of January, from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. right here. And our church is a member congregation, and everyone is invited. Scholarships and home hospitality in Austin are available. The event will be a time for UUs with passion for justice to have fellowship with other UUs from around Texas, as well as to hear from powerful speakers from the Justice Ministry, Texas Freedom Network, Texas Impact, Mano Amiga, and more to help ground us in activism for 2023 and prepare us for Texas UJAM's Legislative Action Day at the Capitol and coming later this spring. Go to txuujm.org for more info and to register. And if you enjoyed our guest guitarist this morning, Father-daughter duo Mei Yin and Klondike Stedman perform an exciting concert featuring women composers. Come join us for music by composers from Spain, Italy, Argentina, New York, and right here in Austin, including premieres of Ruth Meyer Sachs' Music for Our Times and Trevor Weston's Griot Modes. That will be at 7 o'clock on January the 14th, Saturday, right here, and a free will donation will be gratefully accepted at the door. Suggested donation of $20 with a split of the proceeds to benefit First UU and the First UU Reproductive Justice Fund. And you applaud the announcements? Thus end the announcements.
Please join me in the words to extinguish our flame. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we hold in our hearts until we are together again.
The benediction comes from my colleague in Baton Rouge, Steve Crump, retired colleague now. That which is worthy of doing, create with your hands. That which is worthy of repeating, speak with a clear voice. That which is worthy of remembering, hold in your hearts. And that which is worthy of living, go and live it now. Amen. Blessed be.